Hello there guys. Today I've got a really quick video for you which is a look at two kits that I bought recently. If you're a regular viewer you might remember that a few months ago I built this World War I armoured car from Copper State Models, and at the time I was really impressed by their quality. So a couple of weeks ago I saw this unusual subject from CSM and I snapped it up. This is a World War I British Dispatch Rider with a basket of pigeons, which I'm sure you'll agree is not the most common of modelling subjects. Now I'll be completely honest with you, I was a bit jet lagged and a bit tired when I ordered this, and I didn't realise that this includes just the rider, not the motorbike. So I did have to order the motorbike separately. These are not the cheapest of kits, but I think you'll agree once you look inside, they certainly are high quality. And on a side note, I do think CSM could do a slightly better job of maybe making it clear the motorbike's not included with the rider kit, you know, greying out the motorbike on the image, or just putting that text basically on the front page. But that's a story for another day. Anyway, let's look at the rider first. Both of these are 3D printed kits. Our rider here comes in a plastic bag with 4 or 5 parts. As you can see, most of the rider is in one piece, with just the two arms, the head and the basket separate. And if I zoom in, you should get a better idea of the quality. So here's the rider with a really nice square peg there for his head. So that should fit securely. And the same for the arms as well actually, they've both got square holes, so the arm position should be perfect. Here's our basket of pigeons, slightly out of focus, sorry about that. Now the only thing I'm not quite sure about is how this attaches. It would make sense for that open side there to attach to the back of the rider, but then we do largely lose sight of those pigeons. But then if I put it the other way around, of course there's nothing to stop those pigeons flying away. So I'll have to think about that. As you can see, the uniform details are excellent, with the folds there in his sort of a leather jacket as well as his trousers, and of course because it's a 3D printed kit we get no seam lines from injection moulded kits, and we don't seem to have any layer marks here that I can see either. Maybe some will show up when I put some primer on, but I can't see any at the moment, and usually my macro lens is quite good at picking out those faults. We do also get an alternative head here, so the original one that I showed you with the officer's cap, or one here with the steel helmet. Moving on to the bike now, which is by far the most detailed of the two kits, although not particularly complex to build. So this is a Triumph Model H, a motorcycle which was produced from 1915 to 1923. If we open the box we see that we've got a small instruction sheet, which I'll come back to, a small decal sheet, and then individually bagged pieces. Now I'm sure I've seen it somewhere, either in publicity shots or possibly a YouTube review, where we had these pieces but they had just standard 3D printing supports on that had to be removed. But luckily for us in this case, that is not the case. So here we have the engine, and look at the fine detail on that. Isn't that incredible? Not just how it's printed and survived the printing process, but also the packaging and the shipping process. Those fine cables there. Really exquisite detail. And as we move on to the wheel here, the front wheel, again those spokes are absolutely tiny. Very delicate. And I'm glad I don't have any of those printing supports to remove from these. So these will fit together roughly like so. And then we have the rear wheel section. Again, super fine detail on the spokes, on the wires leading to the rear light, and so on. You could probably work out from the instructions how those go together, but in case you couldn't, we have the instruction sheet here. 6 separate pieces, 3 for the main sort of body of the bike, then one for the seat, one which I think is optional as a sort of rear jack stand, and one for the handlebars. The back of the instructions gives us 4 decal options, all quite similar. It doesn't give us any indication here of sort of a year or unit or anything like that, but I imagine there wasn't a huge amount in it. Essentially the options we have here are we have a license plate, registration plate on the front mudguard, or we don't, and we have a couple of versions that have the word signals on the fuel tank. There are also several points through the instructions that have decal callouts, so you can see for example number 4 there on that top middle step. And then finally this is the decal sheet. So there we go guys, I told you that was going to be a very quick look. Super low parts count there for 2 kits, but I'm really looking forward to building this one. I can imagine building this with just a very tiny base, perhaps going through a narrow lane, perhaps with a wall next to it, or maybe a sort of tall hedge or something like that, just to set the scene. I don't think I would do it sort of with sort of trenches around it and things like that, because that's a bit too front line. But we'll see. Hopefully I'll get a chance to build this fairly soon. I would like to say thank you to all of you for watching. Of course, special thanks to my Patreon members and YouTube supporters. And until next time, enjoy your modelling. Thanks for watching guys.